All right. Part two, endocrine system, moved all there. Didn't understand the rules of the game, if there was latency to the movements or the actions or anything like that. Didn't really understand my opponent, what their goals were, or what their overall intentions were, even though it seemed like it was trying to kill me. And didn't know, and was operating under the assumption that it was going to these various systems to break them down and destroy them, because that's what it had done so far with like skeletal, reproductive, and renal. This is where it had like the little slippery move. It goes to my endocrine system, and it like instead activates it and mass produces like a massive adrenaline spike, and it like almost like putting the paddles to someone's chest pulls me out of this state, and I end up like waking up gasping for air and realizing like it's going back to like all the terrible stuff it's doing. And in the room, I see Miriam and Lyria are unconscious, hopefully not dead. I see Amara, I see Theremin, I see Zug, I see some other people I don't know. And I point to Amara immediately and say, I need you to put me back under, otherwise I'm going to die. And I start to say, compensate for massive adrenaline spike, and I get through about half of it before I start coughing up blood. And luckily, she doesn't hesitate or anything like that. Like there was like a moment of like, do I listen to this crazy man who's like literally dying on the table around us? But at the end, she decides to trust me. She's a real one. I owe her my life this one. She hits me with this thing, and I go back unconscious, and I find myself back in the surgery room. Only now I see myself, and it's like my eyes are sunken, like my skin has these lesions all over it, like I've got cuts, and it's just like the thing looks like it's been in here like using my body as a playground, only like it's using sharp instruments and hammers and saws and stuff like that. And, like I look like I am like on death's door. And I also realized that most of the progress I had made had been undone, and that it feels like it could have killed me, but it didn't. That I was like weak enough that it could have maybe finished me off, but it kind of like reset the game, and that's what we call an air quote a game. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So one, like, I don't understand the intentions of this thing, because like that's part of me that wonders is I believe what I'm experiencing is the manifestation of Quarry energy doing what Nui does for me on a regular basis, like where it's improving like my digestive system, it's improving like my circulatory system, it's making it so like I process oxygen more efficiently, all the things that make me have a longer than normal life for my species, even though my what I would consider my species up until this point was Nui proper have a long life compared to humans. So it's like it's basically doing like the random things to make me better, only it's doing random things to make me worse. But I don't know that it wants to kill me, because it's like I'm kind of the host and the manifestation of it, but it seems like it's getting real close to it. But anyway, it reset the game. And I said it was one of those ones where I was like, I don't understand what exactly my opponent is. It feels sentient in a way, in that like it makes cognitive decisions to choose this and that, but it still might be animalistic. Like it still might not be a higher intelligence. It might not be playing these games. Like I said, the systems it chose, I could see on my little spreadsheet that it had advantage in those systems. So it might be like it's just more naturally attuned to attack those things. Kind of like a wolf might attack, a wolf might hunt a rabbit, but it wouldn't hunt a bear, kind of thing. Like, that makes sense from a survival perspective. But I was like starting to understand the rules of it, and it's not just that whenever it's in the systems, it's like, because I imagine it like basically like a little kid with a hammer and it's there smashing bugs and stuff like that, where it's just, you know, it's just like it's like wrecking things. No, it can actually occupy those systems and use them against me. And I think that's what it was doing. Like with the respiratory, it was starving my brain of oxygen, so it was kind of countering what I was doing. So that's why I had to go reach out to that, and then like trying to save the blood flow. So I was like, okay, DM. I was like, it hadn't like completely retaken. Like whenever I first got in there, it was a sad and sorry state. Like it was like running rampant, and I had like no foothold. I still had a little foothold in like my nervous system, but it had like largely retaken it. So I was like, okay, DM. I was like, thinking of it like chess. Like I don't know that my opponent knows what a feint is. Like I don't know that it has that level of cognitive ability. It might be acting on like almost like an instinct for what it does. But I learned a very important lesson from that first thing, in that one, there's no real latency that exists here. So like I viewed it too much as like a war table of moving troops to a location to prepare for an assault. I was hoping to isolate it in the endocrine system and then prevent it from like spreading out to like, kind of meet it head on, like kind of troops versus troops. But that metaphor didn't work out for the way things were working here. And that's what I was like explaining to the DM. I was like, yeah, it's fine. Like Cass is trying to rationalize a very, very like ephemeral, hypothetical, metaphorical device here that's going on inside of his body, and like he's gonna make mistakes. Like that's okay. Like they might cost him some, but like it's like it makes sense that those mistakes would happen. So I basically have, it's like one of those ones where it's like you're playing the board game and you don't realize like one of the options is like uh is reaching under the table and kicking your opponent in the balls halfway through, and it's like that's a valid tactic in this game. Like they could, as opposed to like them like playing like Risk or anything like that, like they could occupy the endocrine system and like snap me out of the game and then like basically reset the pieces in their favor. It's like, oh, okay, like that's a rule I wasn't aware existed. So Cass decides to do a similar. So last time he basically flooded the nervous system to try to work that up, but then kind of quickly ran into that problem of, being starved out from circulatory and respiratory. So he's like, okay. I was like, okay. I was like, I'm gonna do a similar opener, but I'm doing the three-way split. So I'm basically, as opposed to my old opener, I'm changing it slightly, and because part of me is like worrying, like, oh, my opponent is going to, because like I don't know the level of sentience of my opponent, and that's like a big problem, is because if I underestimate him, then it's really bad. But if I overestimate them, it could be equally bad. And that's what I did, is I overestimated my opponent last time, and it still managed to get me. So it's like that's where it's scary. Like it's like you can't underestimate, you can't overestimate them. Like you can't, you can't like visualize it too much like a battlefield or an arm, like moving armies around. But like it is still like biological and medical in nature. And that's where I was like, okay, so I do like a similar opener where I basically I split my focus between nervous, circulatory, and respiratory. So like my brain's getting oxygen. Like that's what I want to do, and it seems like it's good. And it kind of, whenever I do that, it stops with the random stuff, and it starts to do. Where does it move? It moves to skeletal. I forget the other two systems, but it doesn't do endocrine again, and I don't know if it does reproductive. Maybe it just re-wrecked my reproductive systems. Maybe it was like skeletal, renal, and like integumentary. Yeah, that was skin. So yeah, I was like, listen, DM, it can like wreck my skin. I can like live without that for now. Like I can, that can be healed. Like I'm assuming I'm getting like lesions and boils and all this terrible stuff on me. But it, like we kind of like do our openers, and I realize that as I take control of the neurological systems, there's two levels that it can exist. There's three levels, I think. Like the first one is like there's a cloud that's lifted, that if I can take control of the base, I can have a better understanding of the game and the playing field. The second level is if I can accomplish, if I can basically get myself to a certain point, I can essentially send out what are spies to other systems. And then like the third level is like there's I just know that there's a third level. So I hit the first level, and that's the reveal that I just explained to you. Is like that there's something to getting back total control of the neurological system. I think I learned that the third level is no, I don't know. Well, I'll get to that. But the second level, like I said, is the spies and everything like that. So what I do is I split off small portions of my concentration and send them to each of my systems. Oh, that's something else I did too. That was my second move. My second move was I went to the lymphatic system, and this is where again I was like, man, that biology course really paid off. Lymphatic system is like your lymphocytes, your white blood cells, your things that are effective at like attacking. And I was like, DM, what I try to do is I try to retake it, and then I try to like supercharge it, if that's possible, because I know like Cass has some healing abilities and everything like that, and it's like I was like, what I'm gonna, and what my theory was is like I can basically supercharge the white blood cells. They can go out there and they can fight some of the, and now I think that was what the DM had said is like that random stuff was still occurring. So like its focus was split somewhat. It wasn't quite like the same all in thing that it was before, but it was like a portion of its thing was attacking systems, and then a portion of it was doing like the random stuff, jumping around to try to keep me on my toes, putting out fires. And what I did was I supercharged my lymphatic system to like make these like super white blood cells that would go out and like deal with the more physical aspects that was wrong with my body, like the lesions, the boils, like the cancers that's spreading through my body right now. And it actually works really well. Like it worked. It was. I think it was the second move to make, because what it did was it alleviated a lot of stress on my system, and it focused up my opponent to like make more deliberate moves as opposed to the random stuff, which is very hard to kind of treat and keep up with, because it's just like you go to fix one thing and then it bounces to another, and it's just like it's completely random. There's no fault. Like it doesn't like head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Like no, it literally goes wherever it wants to across the body. So that was my second move, was lymphatic system, and that put it back on its back foot. And I, like I said, like I was basically playing like the thing where it would do things, and I'd like, DM, I gotta sacrifice that. Like I can, I can live without the reproductive system. I can live with my skin having like, basically being torn to shreds, or like, you know, like yeah, it's there's a point where like if it was like a flesh eating virus and like your skin's exposed to the air, like you run the risk of infection, all those like other things. But like we can deal with that later. Like that's something Cass can deal with, is like not having control of the nervous system, and then having your brain starved and being oxygen dead. Like that's really bad. So like we got to focus on it. And then but that what my second move basically put it on its back foot. And I think that's where it made the same move again, where it was like splitting focus. It was attacking a couple systems, and through supercharge, and like that was the DM explained, is like your white blood cells are different than like human white blood cells. Like they fix more, and it's almost like they're almost like healing cells, I guess is what the way to look at it, as opposed to just the white blood cells, which like attack invaders and like remove like damage stuff. Like these are like more, they're more than what humans are. And it forced its back foot, and it made the same move again, where it tried to flood my endocrine system. And that's where I was like, I kind of had that like epiphany that, or not an epiphany, I had like the educated hypothesis that I'm not fighting an opponent who's a chess player. I'm fighting something that is aware of its strengths and its weaknesses. So it made the same move again, and this time, as opposed to hesitating, I went all in to attack it. And I think I left like 5% back at home base, because I still was like, is there a way like it can kind of backdoor me and undo everything that's going on? Oh, I know, and I think like it was doing that, and my spies led me to it, because like that was the thing, is like it was like the anticipation of where it was going to move. So it was like it wasn't like I could be ready for it and be there. It was more that I met it there, so it just couldn't wreak havoc and take control. And in this process is when I kind of gained like that third tier of thing where I realized I could like switch off certain systems and deny it access to using them. And I think that's what I did is like I kind of denied it access to my endocrine, and then I kind of I basically moved all of my forces to attack it to kind of expel it or stop it from its process. And it seemed, and I was like, basically, I had like the death blow and thing, and I was like, I joked with DM, I was like, okay, DM, I reset the board, like I kick it out, I have the advantage this time, and then we start over because this thing's got me 1-1. Like let's play for it, let's play here to play the game. Obviously, like as a player, it would have been like a very hilarious move, but like. The survival instinct is there. Like Cass's body is so bad at this point, like that I would never want to risk it, kind of thing. Like there's that part of you where it's like, if it was a movie and maybe you have a little bit of that plot armor, you make that move and you make the audience go, oh shoot, like he killed it. But like as a player, like looking to survive and keep playing this character, I had to like basically finish the death blow to this entity, this force, whatever it is wreaking havoc on my body, and expel it out. And what I'm left with is like this husk of Cass that has this mountain of work that needs done to his body. But I'm no longer fighting this thing that is like actively wreaking havoc. Like I like into like laying there on the surgery table and like, you know, opening up their like stomach and chest, and as opposed to coming with surgical tools, they pick like a little hand mixer up and just sort of stir the cake batter in there, kind of thing. And it's just like, it's a disaster. So that's where I was put on pause, and I'm basically like looking to repair myself. Something I think I left out in the description that was really important, and I think when Kari was talking to me a little bit about in the channel, I was like, I think I have access to those strings now, those little tangible energy things, and like I said, I think the DM just said like they're not necessarily that. It's more like a mind's eye perception of what's going on. And it's like that makes sense because Nui energy hasn't been able to be seen, but this is like kind of my mind's interpretation of them. Same with those like life string kind of things. So like during all of this is like there's like thousands of life strings out of my body, like to try to stabilize it, to try to like heal the areas I'm healing and everything like that. So now it's like I can do it unresisted, which it's still like work ahead of me for sure, and because I'm in such a weak state. But like hopefully now that I don't have something actively working against me, like basically like the kid with the hammer going around smacking random parts of my body while I'm trying to heal it, I can actually recover somewhat to get like conscious again, and then see if I killed my two apprentices, which they were unconscious. I hope they're not dead because that would wreck Cass for sure. But that was my session. It was absolutely insane. Like I feel like the war game aspect to it is a little lost in the recap, but like in the moment of the game, like having it play out, or like having to sit there and think of like what move you want to do next, and like that's the thing is like having the percentages, it wasn't a 1-to-1 ratio, and that's where the DM explained like you had a home field advantage, because like if you had a home field advantage and a disadvantage, where it's like you had the advantage in the sense that it was your own body, so like your percentages were stronger, but you had the disadvantage where mistakes that you made, if I was doing this to somebody else, I would still be I would still be in complete control of my faculties and my systems. And like let's say like they set their respiratory system back, like I could refocus that, whereas like whenever they set my respiratory system back, then now my body started with oxygen. So it's like there was like some advantages I had, but also like some disadvantages because I was working on myself. It was a very interesting thing that played out, and like I'm sitting here racking my mind to see what other things it could do in my body once I learned that it could wake things up or use them in extreme circumstances to like affect me in very real ways beyond just like destroying them. Like, you think like, the respiratory thing, it's like, oh, it's starving you of oxygen. Like, it's kind of like a destructive thing. But like using the endocrine system to like jumpstart your body and like pull you out of this like meditative state was like such a like a dirty trump card that I didn't anticipate coming. And I was like, oh man, the DM kind of killed him on that. But yeah, I loved it. It was Cass's first real battle of some sorts, but it was like a battle that I've never fought before. Like where, I just imagine like the risk table or like you like that war board where you're like shuffling the pieces around, and like I said, like it's easy to like to play out the play by play and the recap, but in the moment whenever you're doing it and the contemplation and the what move is next and like where should I go kind of thing, like it made it such an enjoyable experience. It was really awesome. Like I said, it's like the DM basically designed like a game inside of real world to play like a strategy game and then played it out. But like the the stakes were your life, and it was just like it was very hype. But yeah, great session. That's where I ended up. I'm starting to fix myself up in this meditative state, in this like metaphorical operating room inside my mind's eye, and we'll see what happens next.